Hello, beautiful people. Today, we're going to talk about the Constance Marten family tree. Probably most of you remember the headlines about Constance Marten, the young woman who disappeared with her partner and their newborn baby. But not many people know about her background. She's not from an ordinary family. Her family's history goes back generations, from royal palaces to the Grand Chrysal estate in Dorset. But her life took a very tragic and shocking turn, and soon, her name was all over the news. So, who is Constance Marten? Where did her family come from? And how did one of Britain's richest families end up in such a heartbreaking story? Let's start from the very top. At the top of the family tree is Mary Anna Marten. She was the grandmother of Constance Marten. She was born in 1929 and was actually the goddaughter of the Queen Mother. Yep, you heard that right. She also worked as a trustee at the British Museum. When her father died during World War II, she inherited Crickle House, a beautiful and massive estate in Dorset. She even made history in something called the Crickle Down Affair, where she fought the government and won to get her family's land back. Mary Anna passed away in 2010 at the age of 80. Next in the family tree is George Gosselin Marten, the grandfather. George Marten was born in 1918. He served in the Royal Navy and worked as an equerry to King George VI, which means he was part of the king's personal staff. George married Mary Anna in 1949, and the wedding was attended by the king, Queen Mother, and Princess Margaret. Well, to be honest, it doesn't get more royal than that. He passed away in 1998 at the age of 79. Together, George and Mary Anna had 6 children, 5 daughters, and 1 son. That son was Napier Marten, Constance's father. Napier Anthony Sturt Marten was born in 1959, went to Eton College, and even served as a page of honor to Queen Elizabeth II. He inherited the Chrysal estate and a huge fortune around $115 million, but later gave it all up to live a simple and spiritual life in Australia. In 1986, he married Virginie Charlotte Camus, and a year later, their daughter Constance was born. Later, Napier left the family when Constance was around 9 years old, and he and Virginie divorced. Now, let's talk about Constance Marten herself. She was born in 1987 and grew up between Dorset and London, surrounded by wealth and privilege. She studied Arabic and Middle Eastern studies at the University of Leeds and later trained at the East 15 Acting School. But her story took a dark turn. In January 2023, Constance and her partner, Mark Gordon, disappeared with their newborn baby. It became one of the biggest missing person searches in Britain. Sadly, the story ended in tragedy. Their baby was later found dead, and both parents were charged with gross negligence manslaughter. It was a heartbreaking fall from grace for someone born into such a privileged family. Before we move on to the Constance Marten's brothers, let's talk about Mark Gordon. So, who is Mark Gordon? Well, Mark Gordon is Constance Marten's partner in crime. He was born in 1974 in Birmingham, but grew up in Florida, USA. At just 14, he was convicted of kidnapping and assault and spent 20 years in prison before being deported back to the UK in 2010. He met Constance a few years later, and they started living a nomadic lifestyle, moving from place to place. People were shocked. She was an aristocrat, and he had a serious criminal past. Their relationship drew massive attention in the media. Constance has 3 younger brothers, Maximilian, Frederick, and Tobias. Maximilian, also called Max, works in real estate and got married in 2021 to jewelry designer Ruth Amer. Frederick, or Freddie, stays out of the spotlight and keeps a low profile. And Tobias, the youngest, once ran a tree care business with their father in the West Country. All of them have stayed away from the media attention surrounding Constance. So, that's the whole story of Constance Marten's family. Constance Marten's future is still uncertain, but people remain fascinated by her story. Once part of Britain's wealthy upper class, she now faces a very different life. In September 2025, she was sentenced to 14 years in prison after being found guilty of manslaughter over the death of her baby daughter. Her partner, Mark Gordon, got the same sentence, plus extra time under supervision because of his past crimes. What happens next will depend on whether she appeals and how she chooses to rebuild her life after serving her time. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode of Famous Family Trees. We dive into the hidden histories, scandals, and legacies behind the world's most talked about families. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.